Okay, if you have a Submariner, you've definitely come to the right place. Anybody who wears a Submariner every single day knows that when you wear it, the thing gets beat up. It's a tool watch. You're going to wear it day in and day out, and as a result, the thing takes a licking and keeps on ticking. Now that's the problem though, because as you wear the watch, it's going to get tons and tons of these scratches all over the place. When you look at it, you lose that nice shine, you lose that nice buff, and it's a brushed stainless steel, so what happens is these little marks show up pretty prominently. Okay, now what I'm about to suggest is pretty darn controversial, and if you want, you could sound off in the comment section about your thoughts, but I feel one way and I feel pretty strongly about it. I like to polish my watch, I like to buff it, and it's really darn easy to do. Now remember, some Rolex fans will fight you on this, and some Rolex fans will feel really strongly about polishing it yourself. A lot of people might say, okay, just send it off to Rolex when it's time for service, and if you want, they'll polish it for you and return it good as new. Me, I don't really feel like waiting that long because 10-year Rolex services allow the watch to get pretty beat up over time. I mean, take a look at this band over here. The entire thing is pretty beat up and polished. Now, some people have said, okay, that's not really polished, that's just some dirt on it, so just wipe it off. I assure you, those are all little scratches all over the side, and they kind of get on my nerves. I'm a righty, so I wear my watch on my left hand, so as a result, that far side gets really beat up. Before some of you guys start sounding off that, oh no, it's a fake watch, I assure you, it's a real Rolex watch. It's authentic, and it was purchased from a Rolex authorized dealer. If you are going to sound off that it's a fake watch, tell me why you think it's fake, because again, I assure you it is real. This is the only tool you need in order to polish your watch to get it looking good as new. Scotch-Brite 3M green pad. This thing is abrasive, yes, it is slightly abrasive, but not so much. I mean, look at that. I can use some pressure on my fingernail, and look, my fingernail is still actually intact. If my fingernail can hold up to a 3M green Scotch-Brite, then so can Rolex steel. Okay, let's get this show on the road. So I'm going to grab the 3M Scotch-Brite Green, and I'm just going to start taking little tiny strokes at it. What you got to do is just make sure you're going with the grain of the brush. That's the most important thing. As long as you stay straight up and down, you'll be fine. Now remember, I'm not putting a ton of pressure on here. You saw how hard I was pressing against my fingernail. That's about as hard as I was going to press on this stainless steel watch. It's not going to really hurt it. So long as you stay in that same up and down, straight, perpendicular motion, you won't have any problem at all. This is Rolex steel. It's really hard stuff. It's really hard Rolex stainless steel. Okay, now if you're really a purist, what you really could do is you could take the bracelet and you could remove it from the watch. If you want to do that, you could probably have an easier time, an easier go at it, but for me, I'm a little bit more lazy, so I just kept it on. Remember, I'm just trying to go straight up and down, staying with the brush of the grain that Rolex already had delivered. Now remember, this is not the first time I've done this for this watch. You are removing some steel every time you're brushing up against it, but remember, it's a minute amount of metal that's really being removed. Okay, now as you work at it, you're going to start getting some of that green Scotch-Brite material that's going to start fraying off from the watch itself. What'll happen is it's going to start staining your hands a little bit green. Not the end of the world. It washes right off. You'll get those little fibers coming off of it. It starts to make everything look a little bit messy. So in a few minutes, I'll actually go and start rinsing off my hands and rinsing off the watch so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, one of the questions that gets brought up every time you talk about polishing Rolexes is how is it going to affect their value? That's a really good question. How is it going to affect the value of the watch if you're polishing it like this? Now remember, Rolex itself does polish their watches when you send them off to service. Granted, when you send it out, you can ask for them not to polish it when they return it. Some people like that look because it gives that nice worn-in patina. Now this, on the other hand, is not going to be using the exact same grit, the exact same abrasive that Rolex itself is going to use. But to the untrained eye, it's going to look pretty darn good. As you can start to see, you start seeing all those little scratches are starting to blend in a little bit better because you are removing that tiny little minute amount of steel from the outside of the watch. Okay, now it hasn't even been washed off yet, but you can already see that it's really starting to blend. It's starting to breathe some life right back into that watch. This thing was almost completely beat up, but now it looks really, really, really uniform in that nice broad band. I think it looks good already. Now, we're going to have to start working around that little crown. That kind of sticks out a little bit. You're never going to be able to get right up in there, but you can get pretty close. Now remember, if you send it off to Rolex itself, they have special tools that can get up in there and really remove scratches in those really hard to reach places. Me, I'm just using my thumb and the Scotch-Brite. I'm trying to get as close as I can. I'm really trying to work it with the grain. So it's going to just put in those nice uniform brush strokes and make all those tiny little marks start to fade in and start to blend in and blend away. Now let's get serious. I'm going to start wearing this watch again, and all those little marks are going to come right back into the watch as I start banging it onto the side of a desk or sides of doorways, and it's just going to start aging back again. So even though it's going to look pretty good today, within a few days, within a few weeks, little scratches are going to start appearing again. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're really looking at this from a collecting point of view, if this were really, let's say, a Paul Newman watch and it was really super valuable, I don't think I would do it. But this is just an off-the-shelf, plain old Rolex Submariner, so I'm going to use it as how I see fit. Okay, I think we did a pretty good job in the class. Now it's time to take a look at this bracelet itself. When you look at it, it's really, really worn. Start to see all those little kind of marks, all those little scratches that are going all over the grain. So same deal, I'm just kind of holding it and I'm not putting a lot of pressure. All I'm trying to do is stay with the grain to reestablish those uniform scratches. By the scratches, I mean the abrasive scratches of the Scotch-Brite pad itself. Here I go, and I'm just kind of walking through it, nice and easy, trying to keep a gentle brush stroke. Okay, now I hope you paid attention to how that bracelet looked before we started. When you looked at it in the beginning, you could see just how worn, just how aged, just how beat up that Rolex bracelet was. As you're going to start to see, all those little scratches are going to start to fade. They're going to start to blend in. Again, I got to emphasize, I am removing a tiny, minute amount of metal from the bracelet on the Rolex. But as you go, it's really such a minuscule amount. It's not a really abrasive piece of Scotch-Brite here. So as you look, even with those couple little brush strokes, those top two bracelets are starting to look almost brand new. It's not removing enough that you can start to lose the linear part of that bracelet, but you can start to see all those little scratches, all those little scuffs are starting to blend away. Now, another thing I hope you noticed is that I haven't cut away from this scene at all. I've just been kind of working on that bracelet, just working on that clasp the whole time, while I'm trying to burnish out all those little scratches, all those little scuffs of this Rolex. So as I'm going, I just want you to pay attention. I haven't yet cut away. The only time I'm going to start to cut away is when I have to go walk away to start rinsing off this Scotch-Brite material. And as you start to see that my hands are starting to show that little bit of green fiber that's coming off of the Scotch-Brite itself. Again, I don't think it's removing enough metal to actually say, yeah, look, my hands are turning black from the metal. I got to say it's the green from the Scotch-Brite. And it is kind of dirty as it starts to come off. But look at that. You can start to see this really heavily scuffed band is now starting to look almost as good as new. So look at that. Within a couple minutes, we're already starting to see some pretty good results. And again, I don't think this is a really high-stress procedure. You don't really need any specialized equipment aside from the Scotch-Brite. You can get from any hardware store. These things are pretty much ubiquitous. You can get your hands on them almost anywhere. Oftentimes, though, you're going to be using these for cleaning and not so much for buffing out scratches on your Rolex. So as you come across and you're just going back and forth in that same up and down motion, you really are burnishing in with the grain itself. So again, not even rinsed off, you can start to see that bracelet, those links over there are starting to look nearly as good as new. Again, I'm not going to try to say that, look, I'm doing as good a job as Rolex itself is doing with their special, highly specialized equipment and really fine grits. But this, I think, does a pretty good job with the stuff that you happen to have around. I got to say, too, remember, as you're wearing it, all these scuffs are going to come back. So anything that you do here is really not irreversible, because with a little bit of wear, all that patina is going to come right back before too long. Let's go back to that to the clasp so I can try to work on that a little bit more to get the last couple little scratches off. Okay, it really looks like a lot of that green Scotch-Brite is starting to wear off onto my fingers now. So in a minute or two, I'm going to have to go and really wash up a little bit. Nothing but Dawn dish soap works really good. Again, some people have said, wow, Dawn dish soap, aren't you afraid that that's going to really mess up your Rolex? No, I mean, it's really Dawn dish soap. Rolex has put countless hours and thousands of dollars worth of research in protecting these watches so they could take them practically to the bottom of the ocean. I don't think the little bit of Dawn dish soap is going to really do too much. Weigh in on the comments if you want to contradict me on that. I'm thinking that when you send the watch to Rolex for service anyway, they're going to replace some of those gaskets anyway. The gaskets aren't meant to last forever, so again, whatever damage might happen from the Dawn dish soap, with these things are really sealed up tight, isn't going to really have too much of an effect long term. Maybe if you do it for years and years and years and years, and you let the gaskets dry out, then hey, maybe you'll have a problem down the road. But if you're sending it to service every 10 years or so, I think as recommended. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the current recommendation is every 10 years for service. Then you should be okay. Now, of course, what do I know? I'm just some guy on the internet, so of course I could be wrong. But at this point, I think I'm going to take my chances. Okay, let's work on this bracelet a little bit more. Let's get these links looking a little bit nicer to get those last couple little scratches off of here, and then we'll see how we're doing. So let's wash off some of this dust over here. Again, this is just a plain paper towel, nothing fancy. It's not even a microfiber, but look at that. I think the progress over here speaks for itself. There I am with the green finger, but when you look at those links, they're starting to look a lot nicer. There's still a couple more little horizontal scratches over there, but with a little more effort, a little more work, I think we'll be able to get those to go away too. So let's work back and forth on some of these links. Work back and forth on the bracelet of the Submariner, and then we should be okay. Let's give it another couple minutes. So again, I'm going to remind you, we have not yet cut away once during this entire video. So that's done purposefully. So this way you can actually see how long this process takes and how it's pretty easy. Again, I'm just going in those straight, as smooth as possible strokes in order to keep the grain here. If you start going back and forth, you're going to pretty much ruin your watch. You don't want to do that. So again, I'm just going back and forth with a little bit of pressure, no more pressure than that which would bruise a tomato. So I think we're making some pretty good progress here. So as I'm coming back and forth, I'm just trying to go smooth out each one of those little links, trying to adapt it as best I can. Again, you can, if you want to make it easier on yourself, you could take the bracelet off. But again, I didn't have the passion to really do that. So I'm just going to do this right here on my finger, right here on my wrist, right here in front of me without having to take the added extra effort. Holy cow, I'm getting so excited. I'm stumbling over my own words over here with this. Okay, I think it's just about time to take a look at our progress, and then we'll decide if it's just about time to wash this thing off with my famous Dawn dish soap. So let's do these last couple little brushes, these last couple little strokes, and let's take a look. So let's get in here real tight, and we'll try to see how we're doing. So again, I'm not touching any of the sides with that mirrored finish. We're just talking about the brushed steel. Okay, so looking in there, I think we're looking pretty good. I don't think we're as brand new as, let's say, a brand new Rolex, but compared to where we were in the beginning of this video, you could flip back to the beginning and look at how this thing really actually looked. If you look now, you'll see much more improvement. Again, the only trade-off that I got here is I got a green finger. But when you look now, I think some of those horizontal scratches are pretty much imperceptible. They just kind of blend right into the brush of the watch. So here's that clasp. We'll take a really close look at that. We'll look at the more beat up side. I haven't really even touched this side, which actually wasn't even that bad. But in a minute, we'll go and take care of that too. But when you look at that, that's the side that doesn't really get as much of a beating. It's typically going to be the far side of the watch, the side of the watch that's by the 12 o'clock hour that's going to take more of a hit. The 6 o'clock side of the watch is never really as bad because it doesn't really drag across desks. So you saw how beat up this 6 o'clock side of the watch was, but now even with just a couple brush strokes, we're going to zoom in here in a minute, and you'll see just how quickly those things disappear. It's almost as if it's practically magical. Not to sound dramatic, but I think that's a really big difference right before your eyes. Okay, now that we pretty much did our first round of the polish, I think it's just about time to wash this thing up. Let's get some of the grit off. I'll be right back. Okay, so here I am now looking after I used some Dawn dish soap to wash off some of that grit from the actual Scotch-Brite itself. And here's kind of our first blush outcome. When you take a look at this thing, I think from start to finish, you can actually see the time on the watch, how long this whole process took. Really not long at all. And I think from the beginning to where we are even right now, I think it looks like a night and day comparison. I think it looks great. I didn't mind taking the risk doing it. Maybe you're feeling a little bit more gun shy, but I think these things are pretty tough, so I don't think it's going to really damage the watch in any way, shape, or form, at least perceptibly, or even if you just put it on the market to sell it. Okay, so I'm going to pop it on my wrist, and I think there you have it. I think it ended up looking really good compared to where it was in the beginning. So thanks for watching. Appreciate that you took the time, and sound off in the comments below.